Dear participants, welcome to the fourth day, first session. We have with us now our Professor Sunil Dutt sir, who is actually talking to you about the rest of the topics with respect to the importance of evaluation, rubrics, and many other topics which are very important to be incorporated in any such kind of blended learning, flipped classroom scenarios. So, it will be sir's last session, and if you have any doubts, you can ask sir in the first two session doubts. You can ask sir in this session, and sir, it is over to you, sir.
So thank you, Professor Srinivasa, and good morning to all the participating teachers. So as informed you by Dr. Srinivasa, this session is about evaluating student performance both in theory and practical subjects. So whether you see following blended mode of learning or you are following flipped classroom or even the conventional classroom teaching, as a teacher, you want to know how much a student has learned and what subsequent instruction should emphasize. Okay, so there are many other situations wherein we want authentic information so that we can make certain changes in our subsequent lecture or in our subsequent you can say evaluation program also. Okay, so now in this particular session we will focus on the concept of evaluation and how it is different from measurement, assessment, test, and even scoring, because teachers have been using these terms interchangeably, but actually the meaning is different. And what are the various types of evaluation, that is at what stage during lecture the evaluation would take place. So where there are various types of evaluation, then the purposes of evaluation, the process of evaluation, and then the two methods of interpreting the students' results. One is the norm reference testing and second one is criterion reference testing, and what are the arguments or considerations for and against those particular method of interpreting results. And finally, the techniques of evaluating student performance, because as a teacher if you simply use one method of evaluating student performance, so it will be incorrect, because there are varied learning abilities of the students which cannot be measured by following one technique of assessment, because each technique of assessment has its own advantages and disadvantages. So we will have a look at various techniques of evaluation. Now let me share my PPT. So let us have a look at various situations in which we want some authentic information.
Sorry to interrupt you, sir, but the screen is not visible.
Now it is not visible.
No, sir.
मैं तो शेयर किया है.
सर शेयर किया है बट प्रेजेंटेशन नहीं नजर आ रही सर. एक बार ये आप स्लाइड शो करके आगे पीछे करेंगे क्योंकि स्क्रीन भी नजर नहीं आई शुरू में.
अभी
नो सर. पार्टिसिपेंट्स इफ यू कैन जस्ट
नहीं
reply
आ
to
रही.
us.
Is it visible?
No, sir, it is not
नहीं
visible.
सर.
No, sir.
मैं दोबारा कर देता हूँ फिर.
Yes. हेलो सुनील दत्त सर. Visible, sir.
Is it okay now?
Yes, sir.
So now these are the queries. How realistic are my teaching plans for the particular group of students? As you know that on very first day, I had mentioned that there are wide individual differences amongst learners in regard to their personality, self-concept, attitude, aptitude, age, gender. So I have prepared one teaching plan, whether it meets the different needs of different learners or not. Okay. So I want information. How should students be grouped for more effective learning, or to what extent are the students ready for the next learning experience? Say you want to take up a new topic. Now before that you want to know whether your students are ready to receive new instruction. So you will ask few questions which you have assumed that your students might have might be familiar with those things. Okay, so only ensuring that they possess the necessary prerequisites, then you will begin with the new instruction. To what extent are students attaining the minimum essentials of the course? And to what extent students are progressing beyond the minimum essentials? At what point would a review be most beneficial in the class or maybe during a semester? And what type of learning difficulties are the students encountering? That is, you as a teacher, you need to diagnose the persistent learning difficulties so that some of the students can be referred to guidance and counseling, or they may be provided with remedial instruction. Which students are underachievers? Which students should be referred to counseling, as I told you? Which students have poor self-understanding? And how effective was my teaching? This is the overall question to which I want answer. For this, you conduct measurement and evaluation. Okay, so see, measurement, assessment, scoring, test, and evaluation. Although the term measurement is often used in close conjunction with evaluation, but the two terms should not be used interchangeably. You see, the concept of evaluation is much more comprehensive and inclusive than the concept of measurement, because evaluation contains both how much and how well. So evaluation involves value judgment. So measurement is the process of obtaining a numerical description of the degree to which an individual possesses a particular characteristics or attribute. Okay, so for example, a measurement of student performance is say 45 out of 50 correct mathematics problem. Okay, but this does not include the qualitative attribute, whether his work was neat or not. Okay, so measurement is used to indicate a student's strengths and weaknesses. That is, this answers the question how much, but we are not determining the worth in this case. The second one is the assessment. It is the process of gathering information for decision making. on issues related to the students who are being assessed. So the process of measuring something with the purpose of assigning a numerical value is called as assessment. Test, scoring. Scoring is the procedure of assigning a numerical value to assessment task, that is marking, okay? Then test. Test, you see, these are instruments which are used to measure performance. It may be a quiz, it may be a questionnaire, it may be a self-report inventory. Okay, so uh, test can be, you see, developed by the teacher himself, or the test can be developed by the professional test developers. Like say, there are standardized tests available like personality inventory or index of learning style, which I have given you on the very first day, and so on. So tests provide an indication of a student's level of performance, that is how well does the individual perform either in comparison with others or in comparison with a domain of performance task. Now moving to evaluation. As I told you that it is comprehensive and inclusive than the concept of measurement. So it includes both the quantitative and qualitative appraisal of performance and includes value judgment. So concerning the desirability of the result, you can say value judgment means concern. So education then goes, evaluation then goes beyond measurement, and you can say it evaluation adds insight to measurement. For example, Ramesh's most recent mathematics score was 95% correct. Therefore, he is making good progress in mathematics. Okay, this is the value judgment. So it is the process of providing information. Purpose is for decision making, and it is a systematic process of determining the extent to which the learning outcomes are achieved by the students. So learning outcome is a sentence or statement which describes what the learner will be able to do at the end of a unit of instruction. So as a teacher, I want to compare the performance of one student against the stated learning outcomes. So this is systematic process, and because there are number of steps to be followed before obtaining the result and finally using those results for decision making. So purpose of evaluation, you see, one is that basically the evaluation provides information to the student, information to the teacher, information to the say curriculum developers or management experts or administrations. Okay, so provide information regarding the extent to which a student has achieved mastery over a set of tasks, or you can say learning outcomes included in a particular course, or uh, provides information for comparing the performance of students in relation to learning outcome. And it also provides information to the teacher regarding the adequacy of his method of teaching, because while teaching he has noticed that majority of students are not giving their attention. They they found the classroom lecture very much boring. So it means there is a need to employ another method of teaching, maybe the blended mode, maybe the problem based learning, maybe the flipped classroom, and so on. It also provides information to the teacher for making various decisions related to instruction, instructional planning, grouping of students, learning difficulties, student counseling guidance. And it also provides information to the student in respect of the nature and level of his performance. And the information can be used by the administration for placing the student, or for grouping the students, or for promoting the student, or even for providing in-service training to the teachers. Say the results are not good. Okay, so there are certain areas in which teachers are lagging. So the teachers are sent for training, and say sometimes the facilities are not available in the institute or in the laboratory, so that you can procure the instrument based upon the information which you have got. Now coming to the types of evaluation. Uh, Firstly, it is the placement evaluation. Here, the role is to place students in program appropriate to their interest and abilities. So placement means whether the student is ready to receive new instruction. So for this, you want answer to questions like, does the student possess the necessary knowledge and skills needed to begin the planned instruction? Okay, say my topic is say laws of inertia. So I want to know whether student possess the knowledge regarding the concept of rest, concept of motion, concept of force. Only then they will be able to understand the concept of inertia. So I'll begin my lecture by asking few questions. Say I'll place one object on the table and ask the student to answer whether this object is at rest or is it in motion. Definitely you will get the answer that it is at rest. On switching on the fan, what is the position of this fan? They will definitely say that it is in motion. So this object is at rest. How can I bring it into motion? Sir, by pushing or by pulling, it can be put into motion. Wonderful. Say, let us assume that you are sitting in a bus that is moving and the driver suddenly applies brakes. What happens? They have experience. They say, sir, we'll go forward. And what happens when the driver suddenly starts the bus? We go backward. Why are these due to? You see, now the students are curious to know what is the reason. Then you will say that these are due to laws of inertia, and today in this session we will learn laws of inertia. So you need to know whether the students are ready to receive, so or to what extent the student has already mastered the objectives of the planned instruction, or to what extent do the students' interest, work habits and personality characteristics are different for different modes of instruction. So for this you can prepare pre-test on the course objective. You can also have aptitude test, and you can also identify their learning style. I have given you on the very first day Felder and Solomon's index of learning styles. There are self-report inventories available on interest, how the students learn in the class, work habit, their personality characteristics, and so on. Then comes the formative evaluation. The purpose is to monitor the learning progress during instruction. So this information can be used to improve the process, okay, of teaching. So evaluation of a student's learning during a course, when the changes can be made in the transactions of subsequent instruction. So you see you are teaching a topic in the class. Class is of 45 minutes. Okay, after completing one part of the lecture you can ask one or two questions. Then after completing the second part you will ask another question. So the answer to the question will give you an idea to what extent your information has been understood by your student. Okay, so evaluation, this is a formative evaluation. We can have mastery test for each unit of instruction. You can have a laboratory workshop, etc. And on the basis of its results, you see, instruction can be modified to best meet the students' varied needs. So teacher can review the content matter. He can also review his own presentation, and he can determine which portion requires further elaboration or discussion. So this is formative evaluation. Then comes the summative evaluation. So from the title itself, it is clear that this type of evaluation tells whether and how much students have learned. So this type of evaluation is used at the end of a term, or end of a course, or end of program, even end of a lecture. That is, after you have finished your lecture, before leaving the classroom, you are required to ask 2-3 questions pertaining to the chapter you have covered in say today's class. Okay, so that will provide you the information, and you will use it for the purpose of grading, certification, or certain research studies can be carried out on the effectiveness of curriculum or the course of study or the educational plan. And for this, both criterion reference testing and norm reference testing can be used for assessing the achievement. Criterion reference testing means when you are comparing the performance of one student against the stated learning outcomes. And norm reference testing is when you are comparing the performance of one student against the performance of another student, maybe in the same class, in the same institution, or maybe in the other institution under the same umbrella of a particular technical university. Now, another evaluation which is not considered by many of the teachers, it is called as the diagnostic evaluation. Okay, and purpose is to diagnose persistent or recurring learning difficulties which are left unresolved, say during instruction, by the standard corrective prescriptions of formative evaluation, because during formative evaluation you are also monitoring their progress, but something you have missed out. So you need to formulate a plan, or you need to provide remedial action. And for this, you can use specifically or specially prepared diagnostic test and observation techniques, and students can then be referred for guidance and counseling or for providing remedial instruction in a particular area. Now coming to the process of evaluation. Okay, so the process of evaluation begins with formulating learning outcomes of teaching, because if you have stated learning outcomes earlier, you will provide the input accordingly, and based upon the learning outcome you will frame the question, and that question will provide valid and reliable result. Say you have formulated the question like define force, that after the topic is over my students will be able to define force. Okay, obviously you will give input regarding the definition of that force. Okay, now you will measure it accordingly. You will ask question in the test define force, and not question like what is force, what do you know about force, because what is force and what do you know about force might be measuring something different, because our learning outcome was that they should be able to define force. So what do you know about force may invite any number of responses. Okay, but you are expecting the student to write only the definition, so that a part is missing. So formulating learning outcome, then for achieving that learning outcome you need to know what student should already possess, so what prerequisites. Then you will develop appropriate learning experiences, prepare a suitable assessment procedure, you will get the result. Now you will use this result for various decision making during teaching learning process. So evaluation, you see, can be viewed as a cyclical process, including preparation phase, assessment phase, evaluation phase, and reflection phase. And the evaluation process involves the teacher as a decision maker throughout all the four phases. So in the preparation phase, decisions are made about, say, identification of what to evaluate: knowledge, skill, and attitude. Because if you want to evaluate knowledge, then you will have a theory test. If you want to evaluate skill, then you have to have performance test. And if you want to evaluate their behavior, then you need to prepare behavioral questionnaire. Okay, so Decisions are made about identification of type of evaluation, whether it is during the beginning of the lecture, during the lecture, end of the lecture, or diagnostic to be used, or the criteria against which student learnings will be judged, and the most appropriate assessment strategy you will identify to gather the information on student progress. So decision made during this this phase form the basis for planning during the next three phases. The next phase is the assessment phase. So during this phase, the teacher has to identify information gathering strategies, construct the instruments or select the instruments, administer the instrument to the student, collect the information on student learning progress, and determination of where, when, and how assessment will be conducted are very important consideration during assessment phase. The third phase is the evaluation phase. During the evaluation phase, the information which the teacher has gathered during the previous phase, that is the assessment phase, uh, will be used to make judgments about student progress. And based upon the judgments, decisions about student learning programs are made and reported to the students, their parents, and appropriate institution personnel. Okay, and fourth phase is the reflection phase, and this phase allows the teacher to uh, think over the successes and shortfalls of the preparation phase, assessment phase, and the evaluation phase. Specifically, we want to evaluate the utility and appropriateness of the assessment strategy used and make decisions. So, placement, formative, summative, and diagnostic evaluation processes each can involve these four phases. Now, coming to the basic principles of evaluation. Firstly, clearly specify the purpose of evaluation, because effectiveness of evaluation depends upon clearly specifying the purpose of evaluation, and it should precede the selection of evaluation technique. Then you need to decide about what to evaluate, whether cognitive, affective, or psychomotor domain. What are the sources of learning outcomes, the levels of learning outcome, whether you want to evaluate the teaching learning method, whether you want to evaluate the effectiveness of some media you have employed, maybe PowerPoint presentation, maybe multimedia, maybe charts, picture, diagram. You want to evaluate that also. Okay. Then another principle is that as a teacher, you need to know the models of evaluation, the strategies of evaluation. So it means selecting an evaluation technique. You have to select an evaluation technique in terms of its relevance, objectivity, accuracy to the characteristics. So as a teacher, you need to know the guidelines of writing good quality, different types of test item, like essay type test item, multiple choice type item. So there are basic guidelines which make those items very, you can say, well prepared. Then the comprehensive evaluation, you see, requires a variety of evaluation technique. You see, no single type of instrument can assess the vast array of learning and development outcomes. For example, say objective type test. These are useful for measuring knowledge, comprehension, application outcome. Essay type question can be used to measure students' ability to organize and express idea, Then observational techniques can be used for assessing performance skill and various other aspects of student behavior. There are self-report inventories which can be used for evaluating students' interest, attitude, their learning styles. Therefore, a complete picture of student achievement and development requires combining the results of different techniques. As I told you that each technique has its own advantages and disadvantages, so it will be definitely essential to use a variety of techniques of assessment. Another is that proper use of evaluation techniques requires an awareness of their limitations. So advantages, limitation. You see, evaluation techniques, you see, range from highly developed test like standardized test or standardized achievement test to crude assessment technique like observation, self-report, because these are not very much reliable. Okay, so these yield result that are subject to various types of measurement error. Okay, it could be a sampling error. For example, achievement test may not adequately sample a particular domain of content. Okay, chance factor, say for example, guessing on objective item or subjective scoring on essay item or inconsistent responding on self-report instruments. Okay, and or the incorrect interpretation of measurement results. And you need to provide informative feedback immediately. So feedback to be immediate. Okay, and the evaluation needs to be carried out on a continuous basis. Like say in the in one semester you have 3 sessionals. You are also giving say uh, uh, assignments or homework, or you may be also having daily class quizzes. So the weightage must be given to all these aspects. So there should be at least 50% weightage to the internal sessionals, the assignments, class quizzes, and 50% weightage to the external evaluation. Now coming to methods of interpreting results. Criterion reference testing. Okay, so this describes student performance in terms of student performance in terms of a clearly defined and delimited domain of learning task. That is, our purpose is to compare the performance of one student against the stated learning outcomes which are clearly defined and belong to a very limited scope of learning task. Okay, so student performance is assessed against a set of predetermined standards based upon a predetermined set of criteria. For instance, 90% and up A, 80% to 89.99 B, 70 to 79.99 C, 60 to 69.99 D, and so on. Now there are certain arguments for criterion reference evaluation. There are certain arguments against criterion reference evaluation. So for sets minimum performance expectation and demonstrates what students can and cannot do in relation to important content area standards. And against arguments are sometimes it is very difficult to know just where to set boundary condition, because sometimes we say that my students should be able to describe whatever I have covered 100% correctly, but that may not be possible in case we have a number of students with the average or below average capabilities. Okay, So then we need to set the criteria, say maybe 70% or 75%. And since the data, comparative data is not available, so this is another limitation. Another is the norm reference testing, by which we compare the performance of one student against the performance of another student. In criteria reference testing, we are comparing the performance of student against the learning outcomes. Okay, now here we are comparing the performance of one student with the performance of another student. So describe student performance in terms of the relative position held in some known group. So norms are established. So interpretation can be based on a local, state, or national group, depending on the use to be made of the result. And student performance is assessed relative to the other students. Now, based upon the assumption of standard normal distribution with n more than 30, this will employ the Z score. Z formula is given x minus mean divided by standard deviation. So top 10% students will get A, bottom 10% would get F grade. Next 20% from the top are given B, and next 20% from the bottom are given D, and so on. So it means that if a student is getting 50% and it doesn't mean that he may not get F grade or he may not get A grade. So based upon the normal probability curve, there are certain considerations for or against. So ensure a spread between top and bottom of the class for clear grade, and shows student performance relative to the group. And in a group with great performance, I told you, some will be ensured F, whether all the students are brilliant, but some student will be given F grade. Top and bottom performance can sometimes be very close, and norm reference testing dispenses with absolute criteria for performance, and being above average doesn't necessarily imply A performance. Okay. Now coming to very important component, that is the characteristics of a good evaluation tool. So first one is the validity. Validity, when I say a test is valid, if it measures what it is supposed to measure. What it is supposed to measure means what is the learning outcome. There should be a one-to-one correspondence between the statement of learning outcome and the statement of the question. Say learning outcome is define force, and the corresponding question should also be define force. If the corresponding question is what is force and what do you mean or what do you know about force, then these questions will not provide valid results, because these may be measuring something different. Likewise, we give question like, what are Newton's laws of motion? Now, in this case, you will get different responses. One student may only name the 3 laws, because the question is what are Newton's laws of motion. Second student could state the definition or give the statement of each of the 3 laws. Another student could explain each of the 3 laws with one example. Probably another student could try to explain with 2 examples each. So obviously, when it comes to say marking, you will give more marks to the student who has explained each of the 3 laws with 2 examples. But the question is ambiguous, it is vague. So the better question is, describe each of 3 Newton's laws of motion with one example. So the learning outcome is define or describe each of the 3 laws with example. So corresponding question should be that only. So validity means the appropriateness of the interpretations made from test scores or other evaluation results with regard to a particular use. For example, if a test is to be used to describe student achievement, we should like to be able to interpret the scores as a relevant and representative sample of the achievement domain to be measured. Another example, if the results are to be used as a measure of student understanding first semester chemistry concept, we should like our interpretations to be based on evidence that the scores actually reflect understanding chemistry concepts and are not distorted by irrelevant factors. So basically then, validity is always concerned with the specific use of the result and the soundness of our proposed interpretation. Now, you see, there are certain factors, if are not taken into consideration, would lower the validity of our results. One is ambiguity in statements or unclear directions. Directions that do not clearly indicate to the student how to respond to the item, that will tend to reduce validity. I have given an example. What are Newton's laws of motion? If I say, explain the working principle of carburetor of an IC engine. Now, I, as a paper setter, assumed that student will draw the diagram. But in this statement, the direction is not there. So the better question would be, explain with a neat sketch the working principle of carburetor of an IC engine. Poorly prepared items or poorly, you see, arranged items. So you see test items that unintentionally provide some clues to the answer will tend to measure the student's alertness in detecting clues, as well as those aspects of student performance that the test is intended to measure. And the test items are sometimes arranged in order of difficulty, with the easiest item first. So friends, placing difficult items early in the test may cause students to spend too much time on these and prevent them from reaching items they could easily answer. Adopting definite response pattern. Say, placing correct answers in some systematic pattern. For example, in case of true false, first answer is true, second is true, third is false, fourth is false. Or say multiple choice question, first answer is A, second is B, third is C, fourth is D, fifth is A, sixth is B, and so on. So placing correct answers in some systematic pattern will enable these students to guess the answers to some items more easily, and thus this will reduce the validity. Untaught items, if they are asked in the examination, or the vocabulary is very difficult, say elucidate the concept of, the student is very confused. What is meant by the term elucidate, enumerate? Okay, the student is knowing it. So usually when the student comes out of the examination hall and asks the teacher what to put in this answer, and teacher tells this you have to, sir, this was I was knowing it, but I did not know the meaning of the term elucidate. So use simple language in which your students can understand. Cheating by some of the participants may also lower the validity. Then the second one is the reliability. Reliability means the consistency of results from one measurement to another measurement. So it means how consistent test scores are from one measurement to another. For example, Mr. Ashok had just given an achievement test to his students. Now, three questions arise. One is, how similar would the student's score have been had he tested them yesterday or tomorrow or next week? Second question, how would the scores have varied had he selected a different sample of equivalent items? Thirdly, if it were an essay test, how much would the scores have differed had a different teacher scored it? So you see, if one answer sheet is marked by 2 or more than teacher, if that answer sheet carries almost same marks, then we can say that test is providing reliable result. Or if you have prepared two parallel forms of question paper and both are given to the student, and if there is uh, a high degree of correlation, then we say both the tests produce reliable results. Or if the test is given now, tomorrow, say I am giving you one question. Write a short note on semiconductor. Now at 9 o'clock, your answer is, I have collected the answer. And I'm giving again the same question at 2 o'clock, or maybe after 2 days, there will be a change in your answer. So it means the objective test items provide reliable results because they are very much objective. So in subjective test items, there are chances of changing the answer. Okay, so a measure of consistency. So more consistent the results are, lesser the measurement error and greater would be its reliability. Now let us have a look at the factors. If as a teacher we consider them, then we can enhance the reliability of our test results. Firstly, length of the test. In general, we can say the longer the test, higher its reliability will be. This is because a longer test will provide a more adequate sample of the behavior being measured, and the scores are apt to be less distorted by chance factors such as guessing. Now, for example, to measure spelling ability, we ask the student to spell one word. Now there will be two options, either perfect spellers or complete failures. And if the word is difficult, more students would fail. And if the word is easy, most students would appear to be perfect. So the fact that one word provides an unreliable estimate of students' spelling ability is quite clear. So scores based on a large number of spelling words are more apt to reflect real differences in spelling ability and therefore are more stable. So by increasing the size of the sample of spelling behavior, we increase the consistency of our measurement. Another is that a longer test means that in a question paper you have 20-30 items. Instead of having only 8 questions and you are asking them to attempt any 5 out of 8. So attempt any 5 out of 8, there is a tendency on the part of student to follow certain guesses. But if each question has 4 or 5 parts and there are 20-30 parts, questions, and the content coverage is you can say adequate, then there are less chances of student adopting certain chance. So a longer test tends to lessen the influence of chance factors such as guessing. For example, there is a small test, true-false test, and there are 10 items. Now a student might know 7 of the items and guess at the other 3. A correct guess on all the 3 items would result in a perfect score, isn't it? And incorrect guesses on all 3 items would result in only 7 correct. So this would represent considerable variation in the test score resulting from the guessing alone. However, if the same student takes a test with 100 true and false items, the correct guesses would tend to be cancelled by the incorrect guesses. Okay. Second one is the difficulty of the test. Okay, so tests that are too easy or all the items are too difficult would produce scores of low reliability because such test results in a restricted spread of scores. For example, if the test is easy, student score would be like 90, 89, 88, 87, 86, 85. And what is the consistency? What is reliability? Consistency of result from one measurement to another. So if the same test is measured by the student who may be 85 and the student who may be 83, okay. Likewise, in case of difficult, so there should be an adequate difficulty level, and we should follow the normal probability curve. That is, at least 10% questions should be of very difficult type, 10% questions should be of very easy type, and 80% questions should belong to average difficulty level. So we could get the scores like 90, then 85, 81. So spread of score is more, so reliability will be enhanced. Objectivity of scoring. This is another factor that can enhance the reliability. Then other characteristics are usability, ease of administration, time limit should be for all, ease of integration, cost, norms, and so on. Now we'll move to techniques of assessment. Okay, so let us have a look at, first of all, written test, closed book, and particularly we'll talk about the essay type, highly open-ended question. Okay, for example, the question is like, write a short note on semiconductor, or when we say uh, describe the applications of law of supply and demand in the real world, or write a scientific evaluation of the Copernican theory of the solar system, include scientific observations that support your statement. This is highly open-ended, highly global. Okay, it has got a few advantages also because there is no restriction on the students with regard to the length of the response or the style of response, and you can test their ability to analyze, synthesize, and evaluate, and you can also test their ability to express, and you can also you are also encouraging their creativity, and you are assessing their argumentative skill, but it has got certain limitations. So these types of questions can be given in the form of assignment, not that you will be giving them in the end semester examination. So disadvantage is time consuming because such questions are highly subjective as far as scoring is concerned. So you will get a low reliability, limited content you can cover, and it will favor only the verbally fluent. And written test, closed book, and here the emphasis on restriction. So you see, restricted response as in a restricted response essay question, the content is usually restricted by the scope of the topic to be discussed, and limitations on the form of response are generally indicated in the statement of the question. For example, describe two situations that demonstrate the application of the law of conservation of energy. Now, if you ask describe situations, now one student will write two situations, another three, another four. There is no limitation. Okay. Now here we are putting limitation, keeping in mind the marks allotted to this question. Describe two situations, or describe each of three Newton's laws of motion with one example. If we said discuss Newton's laws of motion, now the meaning is quite you can say not clear. Or when I say uh, uh, state three main differences between covalent and electrovalent compounds. Okay, So this is the restricted response essay question. So encourage good study habit, easily constructed on the part of teacher. Scoring is relatively more objective. Provide guidance to the student to the type of answer required. Type slightly time consuming because you are asking more questions. Now another is short answer type item. So for example, the question is like, say, what is the relationship between molecular weight and vapor density? Or the atomic weight of potassium is 39, of chlorine 35.5, oxygen 16. What is the molecular weight of KClO3? Or name one sulfide ore of copper, or which device is used in a vacuum cleaner to pump air into the dust bag, or it is what percentage of 64. So such questions can be asked in the form of short answer. So advantage is you can test the comprehension ability. Higher mental ability cannot be covered because these are short answers. You see, according to Bloom's taxonomy, the lower level is remembering, then understanding, applying, analyzing, evaluating, and creating. So higher mental abilities cannot be tested by this one. That only you can go up to comprehension level. So not suited for testing of higher abilities. Then comes written test, closed book. We have objective type item, so true and false. So one statement is given, followed by two responses, either true or false, yes or no, agree or disagree. Okay. So the advantages are that you can cover more content through these questions because hardly student has to read it and then tick mark. So such questions can be easily constructed. Objective scoring and test per unit of working time is very less. Then disadvantage is that student may adopt some guessing, and sometimes the incorrect answers have undesirable effects, and sometimes if the items are not properly arranged, the student may follow a definite response pattern. Another is matching type item. So here two tables are given. Uh, the students are required to match the items given in table A or column A with their answers given in column B. So, friends, I'll suggest that in case of matching type item, always go for more responses as answers. Say there are four items in table A, there should be 6 to 7 answers in table B in order to avoid the guessing. So advantage is that use when learning involves association of two things, easily constructed, scoring is objective, guessing is minimum in case you have more responses than the number of items and require very little reading time. Limited applicability because the application higher than application questions cannot be asked. Only you can measure students remembering ability only. So memorization of fact. Then we have written test, closed book, multiple choice, and multiple choice items test a variety of abilities. You can go up to evaluation. It has got applicability to wide content. More content can be covered. Objective scoring, guessing is minimum. In case you introduce the negative marking, then it will be reduced. So test per unit time, working of time. Then disadvantage is that sometimes thinking about four answers on the part of teacher is not, sometimes it is not possible. And because you have to think about four answers, three are distractor, one is the key, but the distractor must be plausible one. Plausibility means that every answer has an equal probability of being selected by the student if in case the student commits some error. Okay, the answer should not be like odd man out. ये तो हो ही नहीं सकता. So this is the disadvantage. Now it's very important. Written test, open book. You can measure up to creating level. Okay, so you are allowing student with a with 2 books only. In one of the universities in Chandigarh, what they are doing, they are allowing the students 2 A4 size paper with anything written on them. Okay, they can write formulas, anything they can write, but the uh, the the construction of this kind of question on the part of teacher is very difficult, because you are not preparing a question which can be answered immediately. If the student has thoroughly studied the content, only he or she will be able to answer. So this test higher mental abilities, develops good study habit, and even such type of tests reduce the worry and tension on the memorization of equations, formulas, etc. Disadvantage is difficult to construct, suitable for high ability groups, and sometimes it is time consuming. Now we move to another one, is the skill test or the performance test. The purpose is to evaluate student performance on a particular job or skill. Okay, so you may have the observational test, the performance test also. You can also prepare a performance test. You can also prepare the observation schedule for measuring their behavior while working on some experimentation. Oral questioning can also be given while evaluating student performance during practical or job or workshop. Oral questioning tests knowledge and oral communication skills. Tests the knowledge, means lower part, higher abilities are not measured. Permits detailed probing. Teacher can probe, provide opportunity for clarification. Time consuming, because uh, all the students are all the students cannot be asked all types of questions. Okay, maybe initially the teacher begins with asking a number of questions to first few students, and later on the teacher asks only 1 or 2 questions to the remaining students. And another skill required on the part of teacher is training in questioning skill, how to ask questions, how to probe questions. Observational techniques, one is the checklist. Say you are measuring the performance of the students in the practical, and you have prepared a checklist where you have indicated certain steps, and you are simply tick marking whether the that thing is present or absent. Okay, so checklist, basically a list of items required or points to think or the things needed to be done. So advantage is that you can easily construct. Scoring is simple, and it can be used for diagnostic purpose, because in case the event is absent in a particular student, and that is very important, so he or she may be given a remedial instruction. Disadvantage is that you cannot discriminate among students, because you are simply measuring the presence or absence of a particular point or the thing or the item. Okay, for overcoming this limitation, you can go for the rating scales. So a closed-ended survey question which is used to represent student feedback in a comparative form of particular feature or product or services. For example, you can go for graphic rating scale, indicating the answer options on a scale of 1 to 3, 1 to 5, 1 to 7, etc. For example, this is the statement. After you see, you are listening to my lecture, or I have given you a demonstration. So please express your level of satisfaction after attending to my lecture. One answer: highly dissatisfied, dissatisfied, neutral, satisfied, highly satisfied. Okay, this is a rating scale. Now you can discriminate. Another is at numerical rating scale. So provide finer discrimination. If you use numerical rating scale, identify strengths and weaknesses, chances of ambiguity in defining a trait. If the trait is not clearly stated in terms of student language, then they may not be able to give their right response. Okay, so and sometimes there is an error in scoring on account of halo effect. Suppose I am observing one student who is the son of my best colleague. Obviously, I would rate him on the higher side. So in that case, you need to have outside raters in case the student is the son of some member in the institution. And training training on the part of evaluator is also needed. There are self-report inventories questionnaires like on Monday you have attempted index of learning style. It's a self-report inventory questionnaire. Likewise, you want to study the attitude of your students towards cloud computing, and you have prepared a questionnaire containing 20 items, and you are asking them to respond by ticking mark, either strongly agree, agree, neutral, disagree, strongly disagree, or 5-point scale or 7-point scale. Lot of information in the behavioral domain can be tested with the help of self-report inventory. These are easily administered. Scoring is possible, except in case of interview, the scoring is very difficult. You see, in case of interview, the scoring is not simple. Disadvantage is that you may sometimes get fake data. Say, you might have been receiving number of questionnaire from research scholars asking you to fill up the questionnaire. Sometimes you don't have the time. You ask your colleague to please fill up on my behalf, or you are simply marking a tick on the first column only where it is written strongly agree, and so on. So you may get some fake data. So in order to reduce this difficulty, you always frame 50% of the item positive, 50% of the item negative, and arrange them accordingly so that the respondent has to read it. Okay, chance of a definite response pattern, agree, or interviewing requires a particular skill on the part of interviewer. Another are aptitude test. We have got numerical reasoning, verbal reasoning, diagrammatical reasoning test, logical reasoning, inductive reasoning, error checking test. So these are all our self-report inventory. We have got the personality test, leadership test, motivation test, situation judgment test, etc. for measuring the different aspects of a person's personality or person's managerial skill or leadership style, etc. Then another is the sociometric technique. The purpose is to form groups in the classroom. Okay, so this is a very useful technique which many of the teachers are following in forming a group. For example, the group size is very large, and you want to divide the group into smaller subgroups consisting of say 10 members each. So what you are doing, the members of the each group or subgroup may be numbered from 1 to 10, and you ask each member to write the name or the number of the student with whom he or she likes most to work or to play or to sit. For example, say the student number, this one, 9, is liked by 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 students. Okay, now this student number 2 is liked by only 2 persons. Okay, so in this way you will be able to form good groups. Advantage is help in grouping students. So this will also help improve the individual students' adjustment to the class. Classroom becomes conducive to learning, and it is very simple to use. And disadvantage is that time consuming, and sometimes some students may hide their real choices. So friends, this is all about the techniques of evaluation. Now the session is open, and if you have any query or any question, or if you want to add something, or if you have got some question paper with you, and you have certain questions in the question paper which are not, you can say, properly constructed, uh, let us have a look at. Yes. All
Sir, I have a question, sir.
please.
Sir,
हाँ जी बोलिए.
hello, sir.
Please.
Sir, if the syllabus is same across the country, say, can the evaluation process be the same all through the country, or should it be decentralized?
You see, you have different types of students in your institution, and all the students do not belong to the same level throughout the country. So depending upon the type of student, and depending upon the, because sometimes the syllabus is not same uniform throughout the country. Now you are asking whether if the syllabus is same throughout the country, then is evaluation whether evaluation should be same. I think evaluation should be based upon the level of the students in the class. Say the same syllabus is being taught in IIT, okay, same content is being taught in, say, engineering college, simple engineering college or polytechnic. You cannot go for the same type of test, okay. You need to use different types depending on the level of your students.
Thank you, sir.
Sir,
Ajay,
actually, I have a question about JEE examination normalization, sir. Is there any justice fulfilled for the students?
so I could not understand, sir. Please, whether you write in chat box.
Yes, sir, I am posting. In JEE exams, is there any justification for normalization process?
Yes, justification, because if the examination is online, okay, and
Yes,
the examination is conducted on, say, 2-3 days or 6 days.
yes, sir.
So in that case, sometimes some students may get all the questions very difficult, some students may get all the questions very easy. So then you need to do normalization.
Yes,
That is
sir.
what in during GATE examination we are normalizing these scores.
At times, the paper can be seen very easy, sir. On
So
some
yes,
days, the paper can be seen very difficult.
that is why I am telling you that is why it is needed. So if we have only a written test, that is offline test, then it can be conducted on one day throughout the country. Then
Yes,
same question, or you can say we have, of course, we have 4 sets of question paper. The questions remain the same. They are simply jumbled.
yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Thank you.
Any other question? So I'm telling you that please, first of all, write the learning outcomes. Then based upon learning outcome, construct the question. Never begin your question with what is course, what do you know, discuss. Always begin with action verb that the Bloom's taxonomy has specified. Define, explain, describe, and you need to put the boundary. Say you want to study, you want to ask him, describe 2 situations. So 2 situations. Never say describe situation. Or when we say describe the applications of lubricants, there are so many applications. You need to mention a particular lubricant, you need to mention the number, describe any 4 applications or disadvantages. So you have to specify. So मैंने जैसे अभी क्वेश्चन बोला, what are Newton's laws of motion? This is not a good question. The good question is describe each of 3 Newton's laws of motion. Sometimes we say write a short note on Newton's laws of motion. Sometimes we say discuss Newton's laws of motion. These are not good questions. Good question is describe or explain each of 3 Newton's laws of motion with one example, that when you are indicating the direction, when you are indicating the scope of the answer to be discussed in the question paper, you have to do it. Then you will get the complete, you can say, responses. Otherwise, some students may write very long answer, some students will write very small answer, depending on the level of comprehending the statement of the question. Because the statement of the question is vague, it is ambiguous. So one question is to prepare learning outcome, the teacher should have prior experience of teaching the same subject. If yes, how many times he should have taught? I think the teacher can discuss with his colleagues. Okay, so I think because that teacher who is teaching a particular subject, he has already studied that subject in his BTech or MTech level. So probably I don't think that he or she requires more time to write the learning outcome. Of course, he can write learning outcome, but he can discuss with his colleagues whether the learning outcomes are measurable, because there should be there are guidelines of SMART goals. You know, specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, time bound. So write learning outcome very specifically. And teacher can have the sound knowledge of the Bloom's taxonomy. Yes, any question? If you have got any question paper with you, can you read the questions given on that question paper? We can comment upon that question paper, that question. Is it necessary the verb should be from the same level in a question if it has two parts? No, you can go for two different verbs, because say you are asking define this, define that. Define force and state it as a unit. You can go to different verb. Define force and state its SI unit. So this question has two parts.
Sir, can I read a question?
Please, ma'am.
Explain the construction and working of Reddy shock tube with neat diagrams.
बहुत बढ़िया. And how many marks are given? Is there any distribution of marks given?
Yes, sir, 10 marks.
10 marks. So please suggest the paper setter to mark the marks, give the distribution of marks. How many marks for the construction part? How many marks for the working part? How many marks for the diagram?
Okay.
So the student must know. Otherwise, what happens? The student give the estimate marks on students that written work.
Thank you, sir.
Welcome. So if we have no more question, so Srinivasa ji,
Sir, thank you very much, sir, for your very nice lecture, and people are very much, they have a very they have a lot of questions. I think now they may be searching their question papers. So it is really a nice session. I request all of you to follow such these instructions while preparing your question papers in whatever the mode of teaching that you are trying to do. I thank wholeheartedly Professor Sunildat sir for sharing his rich experience with all the faculty members. Sir, thank you, sir. Thank you very much, sir.
Okay, sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Welcome.
So